Alright guys, so it was recently PlayStation VR 2's 2-year anniversary. Saturday gone. Sony didn't say a word about it. We were all a little bit disappointed. You know, it's nice to get reassured once in a while by Sony that they still have faith in the system. I mean, we know that they do. We know that they're still adding features to it. We know that they're still investing in games for it and making an effort to push it. But it's just nice when it's really visible and they make some kind of special effort to just acknowledge this system that we love so much, you know. And they have made a habit in the past of acknowledging anniversaries. So it did sting a little bit that Sony didn't even have a blog post or anything acknowledging the Sony PlayStation VR 2's 2-year anniversary last Saturday. And there was plenty of things that they could have used in such a celebration. They could have talked about the recent addition of hand tracking. This is a feature that we never really thought we were going to get. Most of us just assumed, oh, because we haven't got full colour pass-through, there's not really going to be many games or situations where hand tracking is needed. It doesn't look like it's going to be something that we are going to get. And lo and behold, we now have hand tracking on PSVR 2. And although it's, you know, a little bit gimmicky, it's pretty cool. It's pretty immersive, it's pretty trippy. I've tried it on Waltz of the Wizards, and in that game you can just manipulate objects. You know, I do certainly prefer controllers and the haptic feedback that you get and the precision that you get with controllers. But as a novelty, and it's, you know, it was cool to try out, and I will be trying out hand tracking on, you know, where I can do that. Anyway, it just showed that Sony are still adding new features to this headset. They are still pushing it forward and widening its scope. And we saw that fairly recently with it's now available as a PC headset. But yeah, they've made other efforts. They made a sale. It went really, really well, that kind of thing. They're still investing in third-party games, and we're hoping they're going to be having some first-party software announced at some point this year, hopefully. But that was one of the worries. And because there hasn't been a hell of a lot of specifically first-party content, it's nice to get reminded every now and again, just to be reassured. On that birthday, yeah, they could have spoke about hand tracking, they could have spoke about some upcoming games, some release dates maybe here and there, and one other thing. Because today we have heard that the price of PSVR 2 is going down to $400, 400 quid as well. So with the exchange rate, as always, we're getting a slightly worse deal than in America, but of course, fantastic. That is absolutely fantastic news, and it will hopefully help get this headset into more homes, because the initial investment of that headset is thought to be one of the main things that was putting people off getting into it. You know, VR is an unfamiliar medium for most gamers. It's something that's a bit of a risk because you don't really know if you're going to get on with it. You hear all these horror stories about motion sickness, and that is a real thing for some people. And if you're not careful, if you try and jump in too quickly, it absolutely can be a thing. There's various hurdles and barriers to entry and things you've got to deal with, and awkward things that are just not part of regular TV gaming that you have to overcome to really sort of get into and get the most out of VR, right? So the point being, the fact that it has those sort of issues, potentially just teething issues really, because once you get into it, of course, once you really have spent a bit of time with VR, all those things fade away and they're not awkward anymore. But initially, for people just looking to get into it and check it out, to investigate whether they even do get on with it and like it, these are concerns people have. So the initial investment of an expensive piece of kit is a hurdle, is off-putting to a lot of people. So a price reduction like this hopefully will be brilliant for the headset. Obviously we saw the recent sale, it went down to 350 quid, and there was a 30 times spike in the number of sales, and that has no doubt been the fuel behind this decision to permanently drop the price, because they saw how amazingly it sold during that sale. Now, so this could have been a birthday announcement. All I'm saying is PlayStation sometimes You are so difficult to understand. You're so difficult to work out. You do keep us on our toes, don't you? You really do. Because something like this, a large part of the community were bemoaning the fact that there was no birthday announcement. Nothing. We just thought, oh, Sony just don't care. And it adds into this narrative that has been unfairly generated in the gaming press and around social media, mostly by people that are sort of anti PSVR2 for whatever reason. I don't know why you'd ever be anti any piece of entertainment hardware. It's a bizarre concept, isn't it? But we do know that there are sort of nefarious forces at play, and deals, and biases, and incentives, and this kind of thing, going on. So we certainly suspect there has been a bit of that going on, and a lot of unfair criticism levied at PlayStation VR2 over the last couple of years. Most of it completely unfounded, unwarranted. But the fact remains that that narrative has been out there, and something like this, something like blanking a birthday and allowing that conversation to be, allowing that weekend, that date to be dominated by a conversation of, oh, Sony don't care. When they had this in their back pocket, 5 days later, they're going to announce a permanent price drop to 400 quid. That would have blown the doors off. That would have probably given it more publicity as an announcement if they'd done it as a birthday announcement. It's just, I think what we need to learn from this is to just forget any expectations, just go along for the ride and trust that things will work out just fine. Okay? We all have ideas for how things should have gone, how they could have gone. And I'm sure, a lot of us would have been able to make some better decisions than Sony have over the last couple of years. Easy, free decisions. It wouldn't have cost them anything to have this as the birthday announcement on last Saturday. They would have avoided that bad press that was going around, storming a teacup. It's not like it was headline news across the whole gaming press, but it was certainly in the VR community was noted by a good percentage of people paying attention to things that they'd not said anything about the PSVR2's birthday. I mean, they do make a habit of celebrating anniversaries of various things, games, even less significant things than a platform, a gaming platform. But anyway, so UploadVR have got this article about it, so let's just quickly go through it. There's a couple of points that probably it might be worth responding to, so to speak. This article is by David Heaney. He's actually responded to me on Twitter already. I've commented to the effect that I'm about to, and he's replied. But here's the story. Sony is cutting the price of PSVR2 to $400 starting in March. The news of the price cut comes 5 days after the headset's 2-year anniversary. In the UK, the new price will be 400 quid. In the EU, 450 euros. The new price will apply to both the regular package and the bundle that includes Horizon Call of the Mountain. So 100% go for that one, of course. So you're getting a free game. I mean, I would say the only reason that they've done that is to encourage people to buy the bundle, because they really want people to play Call of the Mountain. It's absolutely fantastic. It is just beautiful. It's one of the most visually arresting video games that you'll ever play. Obviously, Horizon's a beautiful game world anyway on the TV. When you put that into VR and you make it 3D, you have that stereoscopic 3D, and obviously the surround effect of VR is gorgeous. Yes, it does have issues with reprojection if you're sensitive to that, but personally I normally use either real life turning around actually in real life, or click turning, in which case you will never see reprojection, so it's not an issue if you do that. But it's a very, very fun game. The climbing mechanic is the main part of the game, and that receives some criticism, but I actually think climbing is one of the most immersive things you can do in VR, because it really feels like you're sort of using your whole body, and it's definitely VR AF, climbing. Anyway, I loved it. Great game. the article continues. Originally, since the headset launched in February 2023, these were priced at $550 and $600 respectively, and it talks about the sales. And this is one of the sort of sentences that stuck in my craw a little, and this is a day to celebrate. Okay, this is a great announcement from Sony, but some of the gaming press have not been fair to the PSVR2 in my opinion, and this speaks to that. This next sentence from David Heaney. He says, at the original $550 price, we had been recommending against buying a PlayStation VR2 for use with PS5 at full price, as Sony's content to commitment to the platform is questionable at best. Sony's content commitment to the platform is questionable at best. At best. So what it actually means there is Sony's content commitment to the platform is terrible. Questionable at best. Let's just go through Sony's content commitment, shall we? So, I mean, leaving aside the fact that this is Sony's second generation in VR committed to providing a VR platform for the second time in a row, whereas Microsoft and Nintendo, its two biggest competitors in the console market, have completely ignored VR altogether, right? Not only that, but they then came with industry-leading, future-proofed features on this new headset. Eye tracking, OLED, headset haptics, resistive triggers, advanced haptics. These are all things that the rest of the VR market is yet to catch up with. Eye tracking especially has got to become industry standard at some point. It is just so important for increasing performance with 4K rendering, and for gameplay mechanics, the immersive, amazing, cool stuff you can do with eye tracking, like in Synapse with the telekinesis and stuff. But these are future-proofed, industry-leading features that Sony has put into this headset. That's a commitment to content. But of course they meant software really there. They're brushing aside the achievements and advancements and the commitment on the hardware side. They're just talking about software there. Okay, let's go through it. Gran Turismo 7, Call of the Mountain, two mainstream AAA first-party games. Sony also funded Resident Evil Village, Resident Evil 8, which this article does mention. Okay, it does mention that. But that was part of Sony's content commitment, is having funded third-party VR modes, not only of AAA top-level games, but also helping to fund single-A games, you might say, high-quality indie games like Legendary Tales, like Song in the Smoke Rekindled. No doubt, like loads of other ones that haven't been explicitly announced as having Sony money behind them, but you can bet that the majority, if not all, of games that have been featured on State of Plays or Sony showcases have had some Sony money in them to help them get them over the line, to help them bring them up to speed and have the extra fidelity, quality features of the PSVR2 versions of these games if they're multi-plat. Legendary Tales especially is a game that is considered a very high quality game. It's not on standalone yet. I think they might be hoping to try and do that, but it's obviously a high quality game that came prioritized PC and PSVR2, and that game would not have made it to its final form as it is now without Sony's money. They had run out of funding and Sony helped them finish that game and expand its scale beyond what it was capable of. Funding beyond what that team was capable of funding without their help. So they have put money into these third-party games and second-party games as well, if you could say. Synapse is sort of like that. They've done that, so it's the only headset where you can get true current gen AAA VR games, not including mods, of course. So it's really disheartening to see one of the most high-profile, popular VR media's press, gaming press, UploadVR, saying that they recommended against, not just that they didn't recommend, but that they recommended against buying PSVR 2 because of this apparent lack of commitment to content. If you're into VR and you're looking for high-end VR, where else are you going to get it for this money, for this price? You can't. And if you're recommending against that, what does that mean? You're recommending for Quest, I guess? Because Meta's been doing so well recently. Everyone's complaining about the Horizon World situation. They're trying to strong-arm developers into creating on their own platform, and which will be bad for other. They're trying to monopolize the market by forcing developers to develop only for the Oculus, for the Quest ecosystem, which is be bad for the competitors. And we haven't seen a whole lot of quality content coming out from Meta. Obviously, they've bought a lot of studios. Batman was fantastic. A lot of people had issues with Assassin's Creed, although it looks, pretty decent. But there hasn't been, by number yet, a huge amount of Quest exclusive high quality games that you could then turn around and go, oh, that's much better than what's happening on PlayStation VR 2. That's not the situation. Anyway, the article continues. While Sony delivered strong launch content with AAA titles like Call of the Mountain, Gran Turismo 7, Resident Evil, the company has failed to deliver anything like this since. The company has failed to deliver anything like this since. Apart from Resident Evil 4, which is widely regarded as one of the best games of all time and now in VR thanks to Sony money, Capcom didn't do that out of the kindness of their heart. Sony are paying them to put those games into VR and to create a VR engine with which they can do that. That was Sony money that enabled that to happen, and that happened almost a year after launch. So yes, there has been some high quality Sony funded VR projects since launch. You completely skipped over Resident Evil 4, and you haven't mentioned Legendary Tales either, and there's many others that we could go through. But yeah, it did front load that launch. So this is probably Sony's fault. They front loaded the PSVR 2 launch to have these at least 3, I could say 4, maybe even 5. You got No Man's Sky as well. Some AAA high quality games at launch. We were absolutely, we were shocked by the level of quality, the amount of games available at launch. There's over like 40 games. Nobody is ever going to be able to get through all of those. But yeah, they front loaded. Let's talk about just those AAA games at launch. And there was those 3 all on day one. Now, if they'd have staggered those releases, the narrative for this article would not exist. The negative part of this article, because it had to get in there. It had to get some negativity in there, because that just seems to be the way for some reason. But if they'd have staggered those releases, said they had Gran Turismo 7 at launch, 4 months later Resident Evil Village, 4 months after that Call of the Mountain, then you would have had potentially would have had a narrative that would have said, wow, banger after banger after banger has come out this year. But they all came out at launch. And what's the difference? If you are a gamer getting a new headset, looking for new experiences, what is the difference? You still have those games there available. It's up to you when you get to them, when you start playing them. It's just, it's negativity for the sake of it. It seems to be. It really is unnecessary criticism. It doesn't really mean anything. And it's not valid in my opinion. Yeah, so 2 years in, the only new first-party game Sony released was Firewall Ultra, which was received so poorly it led to the studio's closure. So Firewall Ultra was a failure. It's a shame because it's fantastic. The graphics are amazing. It's got great playability. For some reason, you know, the fans of the first game didn't like it because it had some changes to it in the gameplay, but yeah, it wasn't received well. They've really tried hard since then to improve it, and they are still supporting it for the time being. But yeah, that was a shame, a real shame. It seems like that was rushed out. If that game had had a little bit longer to cook, we might not be having that conversation about Firewall Ultra. We might be talking about that as a jewel in the crown of PlayStation VR 2, but it seems like it was rushed out, and that is a shame. But it's not the only first party game Sony have released. I mean, technically, what is the division between first party, second party? But Synapse was completely Sony funded, and so that was Sony money. So that's the point. Whether you call it first party, second party, third party, where does the funding come from to create that game? That's the key. So you're criticising Sony for not having a content commitment based on this idea that there's no first party games since launch. But they have put money into a lot of second and third party games that would not otherwise exist, or rather certainly wouldn't exist in their upgraded versions on PlayStation VR 2 or in the form that they finally got to without Sony's money. So it's not a valid criticism. Still, the platform has seen a steady stream of top indie VR games titles ported from Quest and Steam VR. No, it hasn't. They're not ported from Quest and Steam VR. These are games that are made by third-party studios for headsets. They're not Quest games, they are VR games that are available on Quest, Steam and PSVR 2. Okay? You know, when Street Fighter came out on Nintendo and Sega, right? It came out on Sega second. That doesn't mean it's a Super Nintendo game coming out on Mega Drive. No, it's a third-party Capcom game that's come out on both rival systems. You're giving credit to it's like you making out like PlayStation is stealing content off Quest, and if it wasn't for Quest we wouldn't have any. No, these are third-party independent studios making VR games for all of the headsets that they can get them out on to maximize their exposure in sales, which, by the way, I don't know if this article mentions it, a lot of studios have been saying they sell more copies of their games on PSVR 2 than on Quest. Despite all this negativity and recommending against it, more copies of games are getting sold on PSVR 2 for multiplats quite often, and it's down to the demographic difference. Quest is a high percentage user base is children, because it's being bought for them as a gift by parents, being a standalone, cheaper, easy to get into. Whereas PSVR 2 has a high percentage of adults with disposable income. So it follows that you would then have more people actively buying games for it and not just falling back on the free content like Gorilla Tag as they do on Quest, it seems, you know. So these aren't Quest ports. These are, yes, it's true that a lot of these games would have to be developed to be able to run on the lowest common denominator. So it's certainly true that a lot of third-party games aren't as high quality as they could have been had they exclusively focused on Steam, PC VR and PSVR 2. That's true. But that doesn't mean that these are Quest games. These are third-party titles developed by independent studios, released on all platforms. And this season benefited from the launch of AAA cross-platform VR titles Metro, Alien, Skydeath and Behemoth, absolutely. And the best versions of those games are usually on PSVR 2, and certainly the most immersive, with the extra features like resistive triggers, eye tracking, head haptics. They're just the most fun way to play is on PSVR 2. It says also, since summer, VR 2 is no longer confined to PS5. If you have a gaming PC, you can pick up a PC adapter and access new content on Steam VR. True. And then it says at 400, whether it be for PS5 or PC, PlayStation VR 2 will be a significantly more attractive proposition than it was before. I mean, it's nice. It's not significantly more attractive though. It's still amazing. It was already an amazing headset. It already had an amazing library of games, the best versions of most multiplats, and it was already by a long way the cheapest OLED PC VR headset. Try and get an OLED PC VR headset. They're first hand, you know, obviously not second hand. You're going to spend around $1,000 for that if it's not PSVR 2. So it was already by a wide margin the cheapest PC VR headset. And it was already worth the price of entry at full price for the quality of games and the range of games available and the immersive fun features that it had. So sorry David Heaney, your article, whilst I celebrate the announcement of this price reduction, you had to just go ahead and make most of the article a bit of a whinge. And most of your criticisms are not valid. Okay? That's all for today. Stay sexy.